Gotti insisted that his crime family visit the Ravenite to pay public homage to him. The FBI had placed their surveillance team on a block near the Ravenite. This is some of the actual footage shot by the FBI. Gotti reveled in his public persona as Mafia Godfather. He made no attempt to hide the fact that he was meeting with his criminal gang.
The rest of the family was required to come down there as a command performance to meet with John, discuss business, kiss his rear end, give him money, what have you. So during the course of the week, you might have all 20 caps in the family down there on different nights, plus 80 to 90 to 100 soldiers. All standing out there in broad daylight. And for us, it was a gold mine, just seeing, identifying the entire Gambino family during the course of the week, all in one place.
Pictures, though, were not enough. To get a conviction, the FBI also needed to hear Gotti talking about his crimes. They had bugged the Ravenite, but the mics had so far failed to pick up much. Then they had a break. An informant told them Gotti always held his most important meetings in an apartment upstairs, owned by the elderly widow of a Gambino member. When the old lady went on vacation, FBI agents broke in and placed a bug in the apartment.
But a few days later, we heard the back door of the social club open up, and we heard him walking up the stairs, and sure enough, we hear the door, apartment number 10, open. And they all sit down, and they start talking. And after a few minutes, it became obvious that they weren't concerned about microphones because they had a radio on, but they turned it down because it was too noisy. They all talked loud because we found out later John Gotti's deaf in one ear. So the tapes are all loud and clear and tremendous quality.
You tell this punk, I admit John Gotti, and I will sever your mother head off, you sucker.
The secret recordings revealed the true face of a Mafia Godfather, very different from the one Gotti showed his adoring public.
John, listen, I called your house 5 times yesterday. Now, if you'll disregard my phone calls, I'll blow you and the house up.
When John's upset, he starts talking loud and clear, and he forgets about things he should not talk about, like past murders.
Gotti was arrested. In January 1992, he was sent to trial, facing charges of multiple murder and racketeering. It would be his 4th trial in 6 years. Yet again, New York was riveted by John Gotti. Celebrities flocked to the trial.
The gallery, it was almost a circus-like atmosphere. Mickey Rourke came in one day. Anthony Quinn came in to watch the trial. They sent in a boxer, Ronaldo Snipes, who glowered at the jury and within half an hour was kicked out.
John, listen, I called your house 5 times yesterday. Now, if you'll disregard my phone calls, I'll blow you and the house up.
Gotti was his normal cocky self, he's full of bravado. But when you played those tapes, you watch his face, and you knew that's the last thing you wanted to hear was his big mouth.
You tell this punk, I admit John Gotti, and I will sever your mother head off, you sucker.
Gotti had damned himself, but the tapes would have another unexpected impact. Also arrested with Gotti was his loyal right-hand man, Sammy the Bull Gravano. Dominic Montiglio went to school with Gravano. Later, both men would become mobsters with the Gambino crime family.
Sammy was always a tough kid. He and I went to school together from when we were like in kindergarten. I mean, he killed his brother-in-law, Louis, which was like his childhood friend. I mean, Louis Melito. They grew up together and hung out together. They stole together. They did all of that. He killed Louis. You couldn't trust Sammy.
Gravano had become disillusioned with Gotti. To Gravano, a real godfather shouldn't be courting publicity. He should be operating in the shadows, like Paul Castellano had done. But Gotti had no respect for anyone, including his underboss, something that the FBI exploited. At a pretrial hearing, Agent Bruce Mao played Gotti and Gravano a tape. On it, Gotti was extremely critical of his underboss.
I met you, and you too. Well, finally, and said he might not go to people about that. So when he was looking at his time, he's going to jail.
And so you got Gravano and Gotti sitting side by side at the defense table, and we start playing that tape. And Sammy turns red. He's starting to explode. He's just ready to burst. John Gotti, for the first time, is embarrassed. He's turning white. He just wants to duck under the table. He's so embarrassed because he knows he got caught bad mouthing his consigliere, his underboss, his right-hand man.
Gravano would be the final nail in Gotti's coffin.
Bruce calls me one day at my desk. He says to me, "You sitting down?" I said, "Yes, I'm sitting down." He said, "Sammy wants to cooperate." Sammy was brought in the room. He walked over, shook my hand, and said, "I want to go from our government to your government."
Never before had so senior a figure betrayed the American mob. Gravano's testimony landed the killer blow in court. He revealed how he and Gotti had planned the murder of their one-time boss, Paul Castellano, then watched from a car as Castellano was gunned down.
Gravano was a fantastic witness, and John Gotti acted like someone who knew he was going to be convicted, and he was really worried about it. He was ornery, snapping at me, snapping at his lawyers. It was, I enjoyed watching it.
In April 1992, Gotti was found guilty on 13 charges, including murder and racketeering. The judge sent the Godfather to one of the toughest jails in the U.S., Marion Federal Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. The sentence was steep, life without the possibility of parole. Despite the evidence of the tapes and Gravano's testimony, Gotti's attorney in his first 3 trials still protest Gotti's innocence.
If you're asking me, do I agree with the label that he was boss of some Gambino group, I say no. To you, I've said no all my life. He said no. I don't say he was an altar boy or a saint. He was one tough cookie. But he said he was not part of any mob.
In the United States, the mob boss, John Gotti, was facing a life sentence in prison. But in Sicily, the Italian government seemed powerless. Mafia godfather Toto Riina killed at will. Anti-mafia prosecutor Giovanni Falcone had been murdered. Palermo waited anxiously for Riina's next move. Falcone's mantle had fallen to another magistrate, Paolo Borsellino. Borsellino and Falcone had grown up together and had devoted their adult lives to fighting organized crime. On Sunday afternoon, July 19, 1992, 2 months after the murder of Falcone, Borsellino visited his elderly mother in this apartment block, as he did every weekend. A massive car bomb exploded, killing Borsellino and 5 of his bodyguards. This outrage was the final straw. It caused a revolution against the Mafia, led by the people of Palermo.
After the killing of Paolo Borsellino, the reaction of people, of population in Palermo was enormous. The women, the children, the people reacted just crying, "Basta, no more, enough is enough."
Enough was enough. Thousands poured onto the streets of Palermo in a wave of anger unprecedented in Sicilian history. Everyone sensed the Mafia's next target was Mayor Leoluco Orlando, elected to office pledging to rid Palermo of the Mafia. When he appeared in public, women and children threw a protective cordon around him, daring the Mafia to kill them to get to the mayor.
They sent a clear message. The message was that I was not alone. The message was that the Mafia can kill a man. The Mafia can kill 10 men, but the Mafia cannot kill thousands and thousands of women and children. It was the beginning of the end.
People power had beaten down the Mafia. The government flooded Sicily with thousands of troops, determined to crack down hard on the Mafia. In January 1993, Italian police nabbed the biggest prize of all. Following a tip-off, Toto Riina was finally arrested.
Salvatore Riina was captured in Palermo by the Carabinieri this morning. Toto Riina is ours.
Astonishingly, Riina had been living in the middle of Palermo, undetected by the police for over 20 years. When Riina was paraded in public, Italians were shocked. This inoffensive-looking, peasant-like character was responsible for the brutal slayings of Falcone and Borsellino, along with hundreds of others. At his trial, Riina painted himself as a poor old man who knew nothing about the Mafia. This flimsy defense was rejected. Riina was sentenced to life imprisonment to be served away from Sicily in a jail on the Italian mainland. On both sides of the Atlantic, the day of the Godfather seemed over. John Gotti died of cancer in prison in 2002, 10 years into his life sentence. With Gotti's death, an era ended. By publicly flaunting the fact that he was boss of bosses, he ensured that law enforcement agencies would leave no stone unturned to finally smash the mob.
The future is pretty grim for the mob if the FBI and other federal agencies keeps the pressure on to go after these guys. The biggest mistake we can make is declare that the war and the mob is over with, we've won, and go off to do other things. These people are very resilient. 5 years they could regroup, reorganize. They'll never be as effective what they were 30 years ago, but they still be a viable criminal force.
In the U.S., the mob is moving with the times. They're involved in internet fraud, sex phone lines, and stock exchange scams. But they are no longer the power they once were. And the FBI is determined to not let Russian, Chinese, or other immigrant criminals dominate their neighborhoods in the way Italian gangsters once controlled theirs. In Sicily, they are also keeping the pressure on. Yet in these hills, even with Riina in prison, the Mafia is still here. Invisible, but deadly. Today, there are new leaders. They are also from the Mafia stronghold of Corleone. They have turned their backs on the self-defeating tactics of Toto Riina. No longer do they assassinate public officials. Like the leaders of old, they prefer to pull the strings from the shadows.
Forse vivemmo tutti quanti una vera grande illusione che
I think we were all a bit deluded. Maybe we were just kidding ourselves that we could destroy the Mafia with just 4 moves on a chessboard.
In the U.S.,